Hey there, and welcome to Clarkwize. Today, we're going to talk about something that touches millions of lives, but it's just really misunderstood. We're talking about anxiety.
I mean, you hear the word thrown around all the time, right? But here's a thought. What if a lot of what we think we know about anxiety is just plain wrong? What if some of the most common advice people get is actually making things worse? Like, is it just a sign of weakness? Is all anxiety a bad thing? And the big one, can you really just snap out of it? Well, we're going to find out. So let's do this. We're going to cut through all the noise, bust some of the biggest myths out there, and get right to the facts. Okay, so first things first, we have to get on the same page about what we're actually talking about. You know how people use the words anxiety, fear, and stress like they're the same thing? Well, clinically speaking, they're really not. And here's the easiest way to think about it. Fear, that's your brain screaming, there's a tiger in the room right now. But anxiety, that's your brain whispering, what if a tiger shows up in the room tomorrow? See the difference? Fear is about the present, anxiety is about the future. And stress, that's just your body's physical freak out to either of those things. Nailing down this difference is absolutely crucial.
All right, so now that we've got our definition sorted, let's jump into tackling some of the biggest myths floating around out there.
And this first one, it is a biggie. The idea that all anxiety is bad, that it's this enemy we have to totally wipe out from our lives. But the fact is, that's just not true. A little bit of anxiety is completely normal. And honestly, it can even be good for you. Think about it. That gut feeling you get, that's signal anxiety, your body's built-in alarm system. Or right before a big speech or a game, that jolt of anxiety, it's actually heightening your alertness, making your reflexes faster, and giving you a little dopamine hit so you can perform at your absolute best. The problem comes when that alarm system starts going off for no reason.
And that brings us to another really dangerous myth, the idea that anxiety isn't a real illness. Look, everybody feels anxious sometimes. That's just part of being human. But an anxiety disorder, that's a whole different ballgame. That's when those feelings become so overwhelming, so constant, that they literally get in the way of you living your daily life. It's not a character flaw, it's a very real, very serious medical condition.
So if it's a real thing, who does it actually affect? The answer might just surprise you, and it absolutely shatters one of the most damaging stereotypes about anxiety.
I'm talking about this one, the idea that only weak people get anxiety. You've probably heard some version of it, right? That it's some kind of personal failing. Well, that is just completely, fundamentally wrong. And we've got the numbers to prove it.
Just look at this number, 40 million. That's how many adults in the US alone are dealing with an anxiety disorder. This is not some fringe issue for a handful of people. It's massive. And to put that 40 million into perspective, that's about 18% of all adults in the US. Think about that. That's nearly 1 out of every 5 people. It makes anxiety the single most common mental health challenge in the entire country. We're talking about people from every walk of life, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how strong someone is. And when you dig into the numbers, you see it starts really early and hits different groups differently. For instance, women are about 60% more likely to be diagnosed than men. It affects about 8% of teenagers. But this part is key. Symptoms can start showing up as early as age 6. So no, this is not just an adult problem. It can begin way back in early childhood. Okay, so we've established it's real and it's super common. The next big question is, what do you do about it? And this is where we run into a whole new set of myths, all about treatment. And you have definitely heard this one before. It sounds so simple, so logical, doesn't it? If something makes you anxious, just don't do it. Avoid it. But here's the truth. That is probably the worst advice you can follow. Because every time you avoid something you fear, you're actually making the anxiety stronger. You're teaching your brain that running away is the only solution. Real effective treatment isn't about hiding. It's about learning how to face the fear and manage it. So how do you build those skills? Well, one of the most proven effective methods out there is something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. It's a type of talk therapy that's a total game changer because it helps you identify and change the negative thought patterns that are fueling the anxiety in the first place. And here's a perfect example of how it works. There's a technique called systematic desensitization. I love this analogy. Think of it like getting allergy shots, but for your fears. Let's say you're terrified of public speaking. You don't just jump on stage and give a TED Talk. No way. You start small. Maybe you practice in front of the mirror.
then for one good friend, then a small group of people you trust. You're slowly, gradually increasing the exposure in safe, controlled steps. And over time, you build up a tolerance and, just as importantly, your confidence. And it's so important to remember that there's no single magic bullet here. Therapy like CBT is absolutely key for learning those long-term skills. Medication can be a huge help in managing the symptoms. And for a lot of people, it's the combination of both that really works. And of course, you can't discount the power of things you can do yourself, like exercise, what you eat, meditation, all of that helps too.
All right, let's pull all this together. We figured out what anxiety really is, we've busted some huge myths about it, and we've looked at real ways to manage it. In this quote, it really gets to the heart of why this matters so much. When anxiety goes untreated, it makes your world smaller. It traps you in this web of worry and fear, and it can make you avoid all the things that actually make life fun and meaningful.
So, if there is just one thing you walk away with today, please let it be this. Anxiety is real. It is incredibly common. It is treatable, and it is not a sign of weakness, period. And that brings me to a final question for you. Now that you know all this, what's one simple truth you could share with someone else? What's one thing you could say to help break the stigma? Because every little bit of understanding helps. Thanks so much for tuning in.